Hi everyone, my name is Katie, and today I'm going to talk to you about violence against women and women's reproductive justice. So what do I mean by violence against women? This can mean any violation of a woman's personhood, whether that be mental, it can be physical, it can be emotional. When we talk about violence, often violence is reflective of a culture, especially in America, that tends to glamorize and normalize violence. Violence often, when we talk about spaces that is glamorized in, can be television. We see it a lot. We see it in movies, very heavily in video games, which tend to be geared towards young men. It's also found in music. A lot of times, rap music you'll find it in can also be found in sports, though. Sports, tends to be a lot of violence. So when we talk about who is the victim, who is the offender, although men can also be victims of violence, and they are, overwhelmingly we see that women are the victim and men tend to be the perpetrators of violence. According to statistics by the Department of Justice, 85% of intimate domestic violence offenders tend to be men, whereas women it's a lot less so. So when we talk about how society looks at violence and we see how human beings are socialized around that, men tend to be socialized to be aggressive. Our society sees them as being in control of their surroundings, as needing to be in control of their feelings, to be dominant, while women are socialized to be taught to be passive. They're supposed to be polite. We're supposed to be accommodating to people and things around us. So all of this plays into how violence comes about. Now let's talk about the different forms of violence. So this can violence takes many shapes and many different forms. A couple examples of violence include language. We also find it quite often in street harassment, which is typically the harassment is the offender is a male and the victim tends to be a woman in these cases. For example, there is a website that is for an organization called I Holla Back, which is a nonprofit geared at ending harassment in public spaces, such as on the streets. So on this website, I highly suggest you guys check it out. Once again, ihollaback.org. You will find a bunch of personal stories by women and some men detailing the harassment that they've been through and how they feel about it. And the whole purpose of this website is to just put it out there, make it known to the public that street harassment is still very prevalent. It's something that happens quite often, and it's not okay, and women and men alike are not going to stand for it. So let's continue to talk about the other forms of violence. Stalking, for example, is another form. We talked about partner or domestic violence, and then rape is also quite common. So I know we've talked a lot about rape in the media lately. So just a couple statistics for you. Out of 100 rapes, only 46 of them actually get reported to the police. And out of that, only 12 will lead to an arrest. Only 9 people will actually be prosecuted, and only 5 of them will actually lead to a felony conviction. And here is the scariest statistic of them all. Only 3 rapists will spend even a single day in prison. That means that 97 of them are set to walk free to possibly commit another crime. So this is sad. Now that we've talked about a lot of what violence looks like, what the different forms of violence are, we're going to hone in on a specific one today. So we're going to talk about, in a category of violence, we're going to talk about harassment. So we've seen that women are often harassed in many different situations for many different reasons, but today we're going to talk about a form of harassment that a lot of people don't think about, and that is harassment towards women involving abortion and abortion clinics. So let's get started. So harassment in abortion clinics. We're going to talk about 2 videos today. The first one is a YouTube video. It's pretty short, about 6 minutes, and it's titled Roe at Risk, Fighting for Reproductive Justice. And it shows many examples of how race and class both work together to impact women's experience with reproduction and their struggle to protect their reproductive rights or their reproductive justice. The video was very impacting, but the thing that I had the hardest time with in this video was watching the harassment that the women especially, but also the doctors and the nurses went through while trying to make this decision and to carry out their decision that they have made to get an abortion. The harassment was typically done by pro-life people that would stand outside of the clinic and advocate. The video, Row at Risk, mainly detailed this one clinic in Mississippi. So there used to be several clinics in Mississippi, but due to the constantly constricting laws that have been passed, majority of the clinics in Mississippi have been forced to close their doors, which has led to there only being one clinic there. This one clinic that is left has this doctor who has been so harassed. Him and his family have been so harassed to the point where the doctor's been forced to leave the state, and he actually has to fly in from out of state to perform abortions at this clinic. He refuses to leave. He believes that the work that he's doing is a service that, you know, women most definitely have a right to, and there's very few doctors that will perform abortions, and so he refuses to leave that field. But because he has been so harassed, even at his home, the protesters have followed him home, that he's been forced to leave the state and has to fly in. So it's pretty crazy, the harassment that these people go through. So when we talk about the type of people that seek an abortion, especially at this clinic, they're usually young women that simply lack the available income to raise another child or to raise their first child if this is their first. And that's generally why they're seeking an abortion. Some of them also do so because either the fetus is not healthy or it's not viable, or because the pregnancy has gotten to a point where it's dangerous for the woman herself to continue on. So the video also detailed the struggle that these women went through, not just with the harassment that they got, but also in trying to find the funding to pay for the abortion itself. Since there's only one clinic in Mississippi, to actually travel there, to have to take time off of work, to be able to find childcare for the children that they're leaving behind at home. Several different struggles that these women are having to go through. They got to find housing when they're there, all kinds of things. So when we talk about our current reproductive health system and what it does for us, it does very little to empower women to make educated choices about their body. So when we talk about education, we got to talk about schools. Schools are still teaching abstinence-only health education courses, which have proven to not be successful in preventing unwanted pregnancies or preventing STDs. Young women in schools are often made to feel deviant if they want to be educated on safe sex, or they're often harassed by their classmates and their peers if they are sexually active. And all of these reasons accumulate to how women end up in the situations that they do that are negative for their reproductive health. So when they're not properly educated, they end up making poor decisions about their health. And when they make poor decisions, that usually means they end up not taking birth control properly, and then they end up getting pregnant, which usually will end up leading to an abortion. We also have to talk about the availability of birth control. Right now, it also does very little to empower women to make choices. It's not very available. Public policies are what are determining women's reproductive choices in our society right now. It's not women themselves that are being empowered to make these decisions. Reproductive justice is something that should just simply be a human right for us, and yet it's not. It continues to be ruled by men that are in power, other women that have opposing religious viewpoints that are also in power, things like that. So the second video that I wanted to talk to you guys about today that also talks a little bit more about harassment and takes it a little bit further is actually a Netflix documentary that I watched a little while ago, and it takes the YouTube video just a little bit further. So the Netflix documentary is called After Tiller, and it's about the late Dr. George Tiller from Kansas, who was assassinated by a pro-life person. The documentary details the lives of the 5 remaining doctors who can actually legally perform late-term abortions, and it details the life-threatening situations that they go through on a daily basis, the harassment that their staff and the patients go through on a daily basis. It's pretty crazy. I also wanted to talk to you guys about something that I think you've probably heard about recently, these crisis pregnancy centers that are popping up. They are pretending to be real healthcare providers, but they're not. They are actually fake clinics that often trick women with false advertising. They make these women think that they're being offered unbiased information and that they're being offered a full range of healthcare services. They may even tell women that they're not pregnant when they actually are, just in hopes of delaying the pregnancy. They're not giving them all their options, such as adoption. They're showing them fake graphic pictures of fetuses to deter them from getting an abortion. So women, we've talked a lot about harassment today and what women are going through. So we know that women are harassed. We know the many forms that they're harassed in, and we know the different situations. So when we think of cyberfeminism, which is just advocating for feminist thought on online platforms, we can think of the unequal treatment of men and women. This includes ending harassment in its many forms. That's something that cyberfeminists really fight for. So now that we're a bit more educated on harassment towards women in its varying forms, I hope that you'll possibly check out some cyber-feminist platforms that we've talked about today, especially ihollaback.org. It's really simple. There's some great stories on there. It's really pretty powerful. And I hope that you guys think twice about how harassment impacts women, impacts you as men as well. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch today, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. And just remember, it's not your body, so there's really not a need to comment on it. Thanks, and have a great day.